And now on Nights with Steve Price, the 50-Up Club with Kayley Harris.
And Kayley's with us. They've been doing a great job, the 50-Up Club, on electricity prices. Evening to you.
How are you?
Good. I've been talking with Andrew Bolt all this week about AGL. I mean, I'm really annoyed by that ad they run about dancing through the fields to a bright energy future using solar and wind. But at the same time, they don't tell you that they're mainly a gas company and that they put their prices up by 16% last week. Well, the bad news, particularly for those listeners listening to us in New South Wales, we've got some more electricity increases from another provider.
Yeah, we saw some emails that went out directly to our 50-Up Club customers of Energy Australia, showing a 21% increase on supply charges and 17% on usage charges. Now, that's for Ausgrid customers, which covers most of Sydney, Steve. So it's higher than the AGL, and we haven't yet seen Origin come out. We're waiting for their figures now.
So that means 21% in average for Energy Australia, and then when you go to Ausgrid, it's less. It's 17.
Yep,
is that what that means?
That's right. Yep. So for Energy,
which is more than AGL.
Yep.
Which was 16, I think, from memory.
Yep, that's right. So we worked out by our figures, if you're an Energy Australia customer, it's about a $525 increase for a customer on a undiscounted standing offer.
For a year.
Yep. And for AGL customers, it will add somewhere between $200 and $500 to your typical electricity and gas bill. And as we said, we're waiting on
And these people
Origin.
are on fixed income. So
Yep.
You've also looked at Queensland, where we're on air, of course, and the ACT. What about them? What are they going to be hit with? $600 a year?
Set to jump up around $600 a year from next month, but we'll keep you posted on what happens in that space. But there's been all this talk this week about the Finkel report and renewable targets, and while governments go back and forth and argue amongst themselves about, whether we do wind, solar, coal, whatever, the prices are secretly, well, not secretly, they're creeping up, and you'll be getting a letter in your mailbox.
I said to the New South Wales federal MP Craig Kelly last night, who's the member for Hughes, I said, you guys are tearing yourself apart in Canberra over renewable energy targets, Paris agreements, and whether coal should be phased out. What you should be doing, if you want to get yourself re-elected, Craig, is arguing how you can keep electricity prices down. He agreed completely.
Yep.
I mean, because he knows he's in a marginal seat. He'll get tossed out on his backside because people are sick and tired of having no wage increases, but their utility bills go up.
But that's exactly the point, Steve, is that, as you and I have talked about this before, we've got people at home not turning the heating on, and these are some of the most vulnerable members of our community, too afraid to turn the heating on because they just can't afford it. Some of them are even foregoing food, cutting way back on their food bill just to be able to pay the electricity bill. That's what the government really needs to be focusing on instead of arguing about, what's the target for renewables in 2050. Help us now.
Talking about cost of living, The Economist magazine, they do this cost of living survey twice a year. Now, this has been running for about 30 years, so it's got the data behind it to give genuine and real comparisons.
That's right.
What's it saying about cost of living in Australia?
Tell us something we didn't know. Sydney's going up, obviously. It's now the 14th most expensive city in the survey, up from 20th last year.
In the world?
Yep.
Wow.
And all these cities, by the way, are compared to New York. So if we're putting a comparison there. Melbourne jumped from 21st to 15th, so they're on the way up as well. Brisbane sitting at 31, Adelaide 35, Perth 49, all on the list there. Just be glad you don't live in Singapore. That's topped the most expensive list. In fact, a couple of Asian cities have. Hong Kong's in there at 2, Tokyo and Osaka in there at 4 and 5, and Seoul in South Korea there at 6. So it's it backs up what we've talked about before, you and I, about the cost of living and the spike in the cost of basic necessities over the last 10 years. We've got water and sewage up 101%, property rates and charges up 83%, health costs 60%, food up 24%. If people are just getting hit from pillar to post in their weekly bill, and trying to manage it is just a nightmare.
Yeah, and I think they also showed that when you compare grocery prices in Australia to the UK, we pay more for things like Vegemite, which is an Australian staple. We pay more than they pay in the UK because there's less competition in the supermarkets.
Well, the two big supermarkets have got over 80% of the market. What does that tell you?
Beef prices?
Yeah, crazy. This was really interesting. We did a story about it at the 50-Up Club. I fill it at $50 a kilo. Mince has doubled in Australia, and that's considering Australia is the 5th largest consumer in the world of meat per capita. So we spoke to Robert Constable. He's from the Australian Meat Industry Council, and apparently it's to do with the herd size. And the correct herd size for Australia, right, all the cows, 28 million. We're sitting at just below 26 million at the moment, so we need to get the herd size back up to 28 million. That's been affected affected by drought. 70% of our meat's going offshore, so we're left with 30% of it. And of course, that's what drives the price up, even though we're eating less meat.
So the producers are making the money, which is good because they've gone through some tough times, but they're making it by exporting it.
Exactly.
Which means if you live here, you pay more. It's the old argument about, say, lobster, crayfish.
Yep.
The fresh ones all get sent straight off to Asia, particularly China and Japan.
Yep.
We're left with not many, and that's why you pay, $120 a kilo for crayfish.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. And again, it's probably the most expensive item on your grocery list every week is meat. And it's finding ways to lower that bill down by, buying cheaper cuts, things like that. Buying meat that is very close to its use-by date and using it straight away or freezing it. It's still good.
Stuff you can braise over long periods of time.
Exactly.
Mince so you can make spaghetti bolognese, all that sort of stuff.
Trim it yourself. Don't get the butcher to do that, and mix it up and throw in some breadcrumbs and make a meatloaf. We've got some tips on our website at 50upclub.com.au.
Good on you, Kayley. Thank you. Talk to you next week.
Cheers, Steve.